It'll be fine. It's just a conversation.
Welcome to the Mapper Forward podcast, Reggie Black. It's so good to have you here, dude.
What an honor. What an honor to be
The
here.
honor is
Man,
all
full
mine.
circle. Full circle, something like that. I don't know how large circles can get, but this is one that's full circle indeed. How are you, Lee?
Dude, it's the journey, the crazy synchronicitous ride that has got us to this moment over the span of
Oh
like
man,
6 years
tell me about
is
it.
insane.
Who would have thought? Well, had an idea of the thought, but the way that it came around, it's who would have thought.
It's kind of
Let's
crazy,
let's
right?
say that. The sequence, who would have thought?
Yeah.
But the intent and the North Star was kind of always there. But it's such an honor to be here. Uh,
How are
so
you?
grateful for you. I'm good. I'm good. Today I'm great.
Today, we take it one day at a
Today
time,
I'm great.
right?
Yeah. Today I'm great. Yesterday was launch day for Sekou and I. So we were riding high. And I mean, but to be perfectly honest, all things considered right now, if you have your life, you have your health, you have family, you have friends, a roof over your head, some food in the refrigerator, all things considered, uh, life is good. So just trying to stay healthy. I think we're in a mental marathon is what I like to call it.
A
I think with
mental
this, the weight
marathon.
of
I
the
love that.
yeah, I think that this isn't a test for those that we're all being challenged to execute our mental bandwidth,
Yeah.
opposed to I think it's mental than anything physical. Sure, like we'll all kind of gain a couple pounds. Those that are super progressive for gym, go for it.
Me.
I try my best. I try my best. I do what I can and get out, get fresh air. But I really feel like more than anything, this is a mental marathon.
Yeah.
So just grateful to be here. How are you?
I'm doing great. I got to tell you, yesterday felt like a special day for me as well as for you, given that yesterday was your launch day. And, you know, for me, your launch day was the beginning of a new era of the coffee industry.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That is we're gonna take it and we're gonna receive it and get that anointment from you and we sincerely appreciate it. And to be perfectly honest, I think I can speak for myself and my partner, say cool, we feel that way. And so we're just hoping that we can come in and contribute, but then also re-engineer. I think that's what I like to place the position on because we understand that so many beautiful brands are doing amazing work in the coffee space as long as I've been in it and trying to get into it on a closer spectrum. But I feel like now that we're here, we want to kind of shake things up. And so I felt that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man. You're not
we
off the
launched.
mark. You're totally
Oh,
on the mark. So for anyone who doesn't know what the fuck we're talking about, let's give them a bit of an insight into all of the details. So why don't you tell people who Reggie Black is and
mm,
what your new brand is and
still.
tell them about you and Seiko and how you got here, and we'll have a good old chat while we're doing it
Man,
and tell people the weird,
uh,
great, like little synchronicitous things that put us in each other's paths 5 years, 6 years
we
ago
have
and have led us to today.
we have to do all of it. So I am Reggie Black, native Washingtonian, born and raised here. I guess by professional trade. Just let me know how far you want me to go
Go
back.
as far as you
For,
want. We've
for,
got a couple of hours, bro.
profession,
We're going to sit here and just chit chat.
professionally, right now, self-taught graphic designer, which is a long time coming. Something I've been trying to aspire and accomplish. I think my entire life. I think I'm the artist and designer that my mom didn't want me to be growing up because we grew up relatively poor, and the notion was to go get financial security. And so there was a lot of support, but there wasn't a lot of examples. To be perfectly honest, there were a lot of examples in the not entrepreneurial space, the creative space. Like we didn't know how to make creativity a means of income. And so I think my mom and uh, everybody around the neighborhood was like, "Oh, just go to school and get something to secure your future. So I went to business school actually, which brings Sekou and I together back, man, almost 18 years ago now.
And I know
And
Seku's watching, so shout out to a wonderful
yeah,
new friend of mine, Seku, and
yeah,
your business partner. Shout out to
yeah,
Seku.
that's my boy, man.
He's a
We've
great human.
been around the globe a few times together. We've been in some interesting spots together, and here we are. So there's this Delaware State dual degree in marketing and business management. Went off for a couple years and worked in education. Actually, I got a job with the organization that gave me a lot of scholarship funding, DC Cap, here in DC. And the goal there for a couple years was to help as many juniors and seniors make the transition from high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
I also used to teach public speaking. And so that was, speaking in public and podcasts and this whole narrative of the audio version is a love of mine. And where do we go from there? Yeah, we took the leap of faith after that. I think walked away from corporate America, if you will, at about 2011. Moved to New York. At the time, I was building a fashion brand called Black Collection, hence Reggie Black, Black Collection. It was cheesy. Don't ask me how it worked. Um,
Well, you got to go through some
but
of that in order to get
you
to
gotta go, you gotta go.
Perspective Roasters.
You gotta go for it. But it worked. I had two beautiful partners there, Dylan Chase and Mike B, and we built something beautiful. And then 2014, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she was like, "Hey, listen, man, we're gonna take an adventure if everybody's up for it. Everybody being my son and I." And she's like, I think that I want to take a job abroad, and if everybody's down, here's the list. And so we looked at the list, and on that list was Bangkok, Thailand, and
Because why
we didn't
not?
know if because why not, right? And we didn't know if we would get it, but we got it. And during that time, Lee, to be perfectly honest, like everything was kind of crumbling down on me. I didn't have uh, footing on anything, to be perfectly honest.
As is the creative person's way,
As
right?
creative, and it's a whole journey,
Mm.
So that was the beginning of trying to recover from addiction, alcohol addiction.
Mm-hmm.
That was the time of trying to, secure and become a family man, a better boyfriend slash going into husband mode slash father. And so when that opportunity presented itself, I was like, why not? And
Kudos to you,
and
man.
as a designer, I got to tell you, that was the turning point for me. That's when it all picked up, and we moved to Bangkok. And the first place I went to was a coffee shop, Gallery Drip. I was on Google. I said, well, what's the best coffee shop? Because growing up in DC, and as I started to try to find my tribe here in the city, I would just always frequent coffee shops. So wherever I went to, so I
Yeah.
found coffee through design. I've always believed that it's the nucleus of community. It's the common denominator of connection. And so no matter where I go in the world, I mean, to this day, I don't look up like tourist attractions. I don't look up stores. I just like, well, where's the coffee shops? And I learn and navigate cities from coffee
Yeah,
shops,
wow.
which is kind of how we met,
Yeah.
I think, a connection, right? And so, so got to Bangkok and landed in Gallery Drip. And, mind you, this is a black man just kind of being plotted in the middle of Bangkok, which is a metropolis no
That
different than New
must have
York.
been crazy.
Oh man, it's looking back, I'm like, how the hell did that happen? How did I survive it, but I like to call it groundwork. So when I think about all the yeses and nos I had to stumble upon, and some more nos than yeses, but literally, I think week one I walked into Gallery Drip, and that entire staff there, some spoke Thai, some spoke English. They just opened me with open arms, and they gave me a list of coffee shops to go to in Bangkok, and that was my routine for about a year. Like I would
Really?
only go. Yeah, I mean, I would only go to Gallery Drip, Ink and Lion, Sarasia Coffee in Bangkok. Shout out to all three of
Shout out to
those
all of them.
coffee shops because they really molded, and I think, to be perfectly fair and honest, they kind of elevated my palate for the love of specialty coffee
Yeah,
like that.
wow.
I mean, Bangkok did it all for me because in America, here in DC, I mean, like we're coming up now in terms of the specialty coffee scene, but there wasn't a lot. And then if it was a lot, like the communities and the stores were kind of stale and the people were kind of snooty there. And, you know, DC's an interesting city. Like we're getting there creatively and we're getting there on the cusp of culture, but we got a lot of identity issues here. And so when I was in Bangkok, I just absorbed the energy. And then I met a really special friend of mine. I like to call him the sensei.
Uh-huh.
He never wants his name mentioned, but we he said, listen, man, like I see something here. I know you play around with typography. I know you play around with letters and post-it notes and small notebooks. But if you're ever going to be anything, you have to get into the weeds of design. And he said, I'll teach you everything I know, but you got to commit to it. And for 4 years, I kind of went. I'm fortunate and blessed. You know, I had the opportunity to go to another university.
Oh,
So I
wow.
got a 4 year in marketing and in management. Then I feel like I got a 4 year degree from Sensei University. So I mean,
We're blessed with
those
those
years
people
were,
upon our path, though, aren't we?
yeah, man. Yeah. And they've been in my life my entire life. I mean, you know, growing up in DC, people give DC a hard time, but I feel like DC public schools, I had amazing teachers. I had amazing counselors. I had amazing people in the community, in the hood that really looked out for me and put their arms around me, especially men in the absence of not having a father growing up. So
Yeah,
I've
wow.
always had like a huge community and support system around me, which kept me away from a lot of the things that was going on around me. You know, DC's pretty and gentrified now, but growing up here in the mid '80s, early '90s, it wasn't the best place to be. It was the murder capital for quite some time.
Wow.
Um,
I didn't know
yeah,
that
the
about DC
opportunity.
in the 80s.
Yeah, man. It was drugs. It was crime. It was because it was the forgotten city. Like there was no desire to be here. When you think about where DC sits geographically, most people at the time, and you know, learning this from my mom, there's waves of urbanization in
Mm.
the city. You know, some every 10 years she would tell me, because she's been here since the 50s, I believe. She would tell me that every 10 or 20 years or so there's the shift of people wanting to move in the city and then move out the city, move in the city and move out the city. And so Maryland and Virginia is where people would go for safety because DC was just so rough. And so
Wow.
what you had was just kind of like Congress, and then people were getting the fuck out like at 5 p.m. There wasn't a nightlife. There wasn't, you know, the restaurant industry that you have here. There wasn't like the fancy conferences or anything. I vividly remember going downtown as a child, and I know this like vividly because I used to be afraid of pigeons. And you could literally like
All
walk
your
downtown
life?
and it'd be like all my life,
Okay.
like afraid of. I mean, I think now I might, if I see one, I'm all right. But like growing up, I was afraid of
Just
pigeons and clowns.
clowns, I understand. Pigeons, I mean, I understand that one too. We've all got something that
Yeah,
triggers a fear in us. For some people, it's
yeah,
dogs. Other people, it's pigeons. A
yeah.
pigeon probably tried to peck a chip out of your hand or something when you were a little
I don't
baby, and
know
you
what
were
happened.
traumatized by
I
it.
don't know what happened, but I vividly remember being able to walk downtown DC, and you can throw a rock and just like a flock of pigeons will
Wow.
disperse throughout the street, and there was nobody in the streets. And so that's the DC that, you know, people don't know. They see it today as one of the high powered cities of the world that it is. And I'm
Mm.
grateful for the change, but it came with a hell of a cost in gentrification. So did that Bangkok for 4 years. Started to develop my own personal style, and one exhibition turned into another. I had the coffee shop that I would frequent, Ink and Lion. I realized that they had, you know, beautiful brick walls, and I was like, man, like, do you guys ever hold exhibitions here? And he's like, yeah, like Kay, the owner of Ink and Lion, he's like, yeah, man, like we do them regularly. And I was like, well, I have work. Mind you, at the time, I didn't have any work. I was just trying to pitch
Mm.
myself and start to get out there. And I think that was the first time, that was the first year Sekou came and visited Thailand in 2015, I believe, to see my first exhibition. I mean, he's a traveler as well. So he's always like zooming around the country, around the world, wherever he kind of the wind blows. And he came to Bangkok in 2015 and caught the tail end of my exhibition. So, but I mean, there was one exhibition in Bangkok led to another, so total three. And then I had an exhibition in Tokyo and an exhibition in Hong Kong, and it was just really my wife and I just kind of pulling the weight of the independent. There was no at that time there was no manager, there was no agency that was just, it was just Reggie Black walking around Bangkok and flying to Melbourne and all these cities trying to like scratch for opportunities because I knew what was here. I had to leave to find that thing that I wanted to become. Yeah. So that's the accelerated version of
total underachiever. Yeah. No, never doing hard shit, always just coasting, living comfortable life.
I'm just never gonna refuse to give up on the possibilities of who I can become. And I think I was watching the Last Dance documentary last night, and Jordan said something that really struck me. It's like, all you got to do is start with hope. And so I grew up realizing what was in DC, the household that I grew up in. And I was like, man, it just has to be more. I'm no different than any other kid walking throughout DC, And so I was just fortunate and lucky, because I do believe that luck has a lot to do with the cards that I was dealt and the positions in my life that I was given. And so I just kind of followed where the good people were telling me to go. I've always been a student, hence why like at 36, I'm getting into coffee, but you know what I mean? Like I'm always curious. I'm always curious to learn stuff. So artist turned designer, got back to DC 2018, had a really big show here, sold out, exhibited some work at an art fair here, super fine, showcasing work with a good friend of mine, Nina from Monochrome Collective. And yeah, man, it's been a ride, Lee. I got to tell you, I never thought that my words and language, because growing up, I always thought that art was, an easel and painting. And yeah. And so I was always afraid to actually own and call myself an artist. And a couple of good friends of mine, Allison, my wife, Shantae, everybody was like, yo, like, you just got to own who you are and be it. And so when I stepped into it, that was kind of it for it. Like, I've always loved words. I've always read a ton of books. My mom was like, you're going to get your education because, they can't take your mind.
Mom sounds like a badass.
And my mom, she's like one of the quietest little wizards you'll meet.
The quietest little wizards. You should get her a T-shirt that says that. I'm the quietest little wizard.
She doesn't say a lot, but whatever she says, man, it rings bells. And I think that I don't know how she did it, but she's been able to be the best mom for myself and my younger brother who's in Houston. And I wouldn't have had it any other way. I think the welfare, the food stamps, the trenches gave us the thickness.
It gives you the grit, right? It
cultivates grit. Yeah. And living in Brooklyn, they'll do that to you. Go ahead. I lived in Brooklyn, New York too. So, but when in 2011, when I walked away from corporate America, I decided I was going to try to go to New York and be this big fashion designer. So that's a whole other era of my life. Maybe
once again,
people don't
someone
know
who's terrified of trying things.
I'll start over even to this day. Like if someone's like, hey, let's completely start over, I'll grab a backpack and hit the road. I'm okay with living out of a backpack.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what you're doing now with Perspective Roasters.
Yeah. We are. Yeah, we started, Sekou and I, we started talking about, well, independently, here's how it started. We both always wanted to own and do something in coffee. And we were thinking about it in our own perspectives and our own relative silos. Mm-hmm. And then when we started talking about just the love of coffee and what his background was and what some of his aspirations were. And for me, I've just always admired the coffee culture from the design perspective, and then when I got into it, I was like, oh, wow, like specialty coffee is a whole nother thing. And so I started drinking coffee, but that wasn't until Bangkok. And then you go to Japan and you're in the middle of Tokyo and you see a coffee shop design like a retail space where they're selling $5,000 sneakers. You're like, what the hell is going on? And so the Asian influence just showed me the possibilities of where you could take design in the coffee space. And so Sekou and I kept talking about it. We hung out and he came to Thailand again, maybe 2 or 3 times, actually. Then we hung out in Cambodia and we just talked about this idea of the coffee shop. And time passed and I got back to the U.S. permanently. My family and I, we got back in 2018. Son graduated from high school, off to college. Whole family's coming back. And Sekou and I just started kind of hanging out again like we used to do in college. And it's like, man, like Actually, I'll tell you what happened. We started messing around with names. And then when he and I landed on Perspective, I looked back and realized that it was a name that I had wrote down on the list of things that I wanted to own. And so we
Wow.
both had the same name in mind. And that was like, all right, like, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think that was, man, maybe Thanksgiving of last year when we would start going out and just sitting and talking. And one day the domain had came back open. That's how it happened. The domain had came back open, and I was like, "Yo, dude, you still down for this Perspective thing?" And so I just bought the domain, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing, but I knew that there was a space, and I still completely believe in my heart that there's a space to innovate and shift up the coffee culture. So here we are.
Well, when we crossed paths again, it was during the pandemic
Yep.
when everyone was trying to figure out what happens now.
Mhm.
And, you know, I spent a lot of my consulting time telling people don't come into the coffee industry.
Mhm.
I did not say that to you.
And I was afraid of that. I'll tell you, Lee, I was watching you build everything that you've built from afar. And I was like that because we only hung out like twice
Yeah.
in Melbourne when we were something,
But it
right?
was
Like
in Sydney and it was, but
Sydney.
it
Yep.
was profound.
It was.
I remember when we hung out and we even like we verbalized it immediately. Like there was a reason
Yep.
we were meant to
Yep.
meet
Yep.
and we won't
Yep.
know what that reason is until we
I
know
agree.
what that reason is. And then we both went on our separate ways
That's right.
and the seed was planted.
Yep. That's right. That's how it happened. Literally just like that. And so to watch you build everything that you've built when Sekou and I was brainstorming of like potential uh, resources and connections to kind of get into coffee the way we wanted to get in because we knew people that were in coffee, but we were like, let's try to forge our own path and do this thing ourselves, right? And you instantly came to mind just because I've watched you go into the coffee industry and shake it up and build Elixir and build everything that you've built. And I was like, man, like if anybody has some knowledge, like let me just hit up Lee. And I reached out to you and I was like, hey, I don't know if you like consult or coach, but I'm trying to slide over from design and do a coffee company in the middle of a pandemic. And that was to be quite honest, that was Sekou pulling the trigger
Yeah,
because we were
wow.
like, man, we got to get the money. We got to do this. We got to do that. And he just called me one day. It was like, man, I bought the roaster. And I was like, what? Like, how do you
Like,
even know I have the money?
let me
Like,
show you how I'm going to accelerate this process.
yeah, like,
Tick.
like enough talking. No more meetings. No more meetings. I bought the roaster. And so, and that was, to be honest, that was the fire that we needed because I was the fire that we needed to get moving. And, I had the identity locked in my brain the moment that we started talking about it. And Sekou just trusted me with that. There was some rocky road bumps along the road, but we got around to the concept. We got around to the name. I leaned on you for a lot of advice. I leaned on
Our
a
group.
lot of the mentorship, our group that we have. I was just about to say
Yeah.
that. And it's been a ride, man. And the whole notion is to create this hybrid of what coffee should be. We want to attack it from two angles, right? Like we want to make sure that those that are the coffee snobs can consume our product and say, wow, well, the profile is there. But if you also enjoy design, you can come in it from
Yeah.
that perspective and say, well, like the packaging is great and how to add layers on top of it. Because, what we notice and realize is that they create a profile, they package beans, and they sit them on the shelf, hoping that somebody will sniff through them from the 20 coffee bags that's on the end caps in Whole Foods or wherever you are, right? And then if you're fortunate enough, somebody's going to grab your bean, and then maybe they'll tell somebody, and the trickle down effect comes that way. Or if you're Starbucks or your Blue Bottle or your Intelligentsia or whoever you are, like you just build this mega thing and then you build the brand from there. And I'm saying that there has to be a middle ground. Like you have
Right.
to be able to scale everything back and do it the way that honestly that you've done it. I look at it. I'm a music head, so I think about like the independent route that some artists will take when you think about Chance the Rapper or who else is another favorite of mine that was indie for a long time. I'm drawing a blank right
Oh,
now.
like Macklemore and
Yeah, gosh, I'm drawing a blank. Um, yeah, but all the indie guys that have done it now, when you think about what Master P did, at least for me back in the day, how he was one of the first black millionaires on the Forbes list. When you think about what Jay-Z did
Jay-Z
with
did it too,
Rockefeller, I was
yeah.
like, yeah, I was like, there has to be a way that we can come in and carve out our own space, not try to play the game of the coffee industry because, it always looked like it was just one
Yeah.
demographic, like cool dudes with, moosed up hair, white dudes in Williamsburg that somehow, for whatever reason, was able to anoint the entire industry. And I'm like, man, like there has to be more representation. And if there is, I didn't see much. And, I would travel around the world, Lee, when I tell you, everywhere I went, there was just this stale representation of all white people in coffee. And I was like, man, there has to be somebody that's doing something to the standard. Because I think for black people, unfortunately, when we enter spaces, people try to give us a pass like, oh, that's a black owned business. So I'm expecting their stuff to not be up to par. And I'm like, no, like black people are just as excellent as everybody else. And we can raise the standard and exceed it when you look at the history of everything, like everything brilliant in this country and the world, it comes from someone black. Music was birthed by blues. Elvis took it. You know what I mean? Like everything that you think about, hip hop is the fastest genre of music that has penetrated the world globally. We've never seen this before, and so in the space of coffee, I'm like, man, there just has to be a different way. So,
And when we approached this project, it wasn't about you and Sekou being black men. It was about
no,
how do
not at
we
all,
create
not at
a
all.
brand of excellence that
Absolutely, it's
taps
always
into
excellence.
your unique individual specialties, and how do we bring them
Sure.
together?
Sure. Because I think people will. You're right. They'll put you in. Although those are two black men doing
Yeah.
coffee, so we can just kind of give them a pass, and whatever they do is fine because they're checking the token box or some shit. And we're like, nope. We want to be on the same page and plate as everybody else that's doing coffee. And so look at us that way first, but then also don't forget that we're two awesome fucking black men as
Yeah,
well.
you are. I mean, not
Yeah.
just because you're my friends, but you really are. And I remember, I don't know if you remember the conversation when I said to you why I said you should do this in amongst a sea of people that when I was telling everyone that was coming at me, this was probably
Ah.
2 months ago, 3 months ago, and I was
Yep.
so
Yep.
many people were like, Lee, I need you to help me start a roasting brand. Lee, I need you to help me figure out how to open a
Yep.
cafe. And I'm saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it.
Well,
You remember why I
you
told
told me
you?
that you told me that I'm used to doing hard shit,
Exactly. You knew how to do
and
hard shit. You had been through the
yeah,
process again
yeah,
and again and
yeah,
again. You know the grit, the hard work, the emotional torment, the intelligence,
yeah,
the emotional
yeah,
intelligence, all of that that's
yeah.
required to do hard shit. This was not going to be your
And I
first foray
appreciate
into
that.
that.
I appreciate that. My homie Jason talks a lot about grit and trusting your gut, and we have a lot of conversations about that. And he's like, "Yo, like just always lean into that gut because that's what got you there." And so here we are in coffee, and there's 10 years of researching it from the outside, 12, 15 years. No matter, I don't know how long I've been just traveling and consuming coffee and hanging in coffee shops, and now I'm like, all right, like I know enough to get a new fire started. Like I'm not trying to start the fire that's
No,
existing.
no.
I know enough to get a new fire started. And then what I don't know, I'm humble enough to ask help for those things that I don't know, which is why I think we're even on this call because I reached out to you and I was like, hey, do you think I can do this? And you were like, yeah, like
Yeah, yeah.
it's hard, but yeah. So
And
thank you, man.
you're so welcome. And I'm humbled that you actually trust me to
Yeah,
like guide you along this journey. This group coaching that we've started with Mapper
yeah,
Forward, this
yeah,
group that
yeah.
our group that we're a part of is just so fucking special.
Phenomenal. I've never been amongst a group of people that just genuinely want everybody to win. That there's a camaraderie in that group. that everybody's like, we show up the designated times and spaces that we need to. We lay it all on the line. We encourage the shit out of each other. And we watch what everybody is doing. We add input, and it just feels like no one's trying to get anything from anybody. And I feel like a lot of times business, creativity, ideas, ventures, whatever you want to call it, people stop somewhere along the line because they meet someone who wants to take advantage of them. I've been in the situation, I've been taken advantage of. Like, so I know that rope in that world really well. And so when you enter the Map It Forward coaching sessions led by you and other phenomenal guys that are a part of the group, you get in and you realize that people are just really trying to do something different and new around the world in various pockets of the world. And you're like, man, like I'm not the only crazy one, or I'm not like the only
You're the right kind of
outlier
crazy.
that
You're the
you're the
right
right
kind of
kind of
crazy.
crazy. So yeah, it's a blessing to be there. Because my wife and I, we talk about that often. Like, you got to get people in your path that have the proper advice that can take you to the next level. Because I think we feel like we know it all, or to be frank, like people would rather struggle than ask for help.
Yeah.
Like they could have a friend like right next door and they would rather just not do the thing or talk about the thing than to ask for help.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, man, like if you know you can't do a certain thing, and I'm gonna throw out there, like I knew I had a certain time frame for my career as an
Yeah.
artist. And
I
my
hear
good
you on
friend
that.
Allison and my good friend Allison, who we've been friends for over 10, 12 years. And I've always known she's had the characteristics that, because my wife was my manager for quite some time. Like she never officially got the coin,
Shantae's
the
your wife's
term,
name,
and
right?
Conte's my wife's
Shout
name.
out to the
She
amazing
man,
Shantae. I have heard
she's
about
the
her since
captain
we
of the
first
ship.
met, and I thought I
Yeah,
can't
she's the
wait to meet
captain
this
of the
amazing
ship.
lady one day.
Yeah, she's the captain of the ship, man. I'm just on the dock reeling in the all the fish and
Reaping the
stuff or whatever it is.
rewards of having such a
Yeah, I'm
phenomenal
just
woman.
I'm she's like, just go and do the thing and make sure you do the thing well. But my friend Allison, I was like, man, I know that there's a point in my career where Asia and everything I've accomplished can mean nothing. And so for me, knowing that, it's like, man, just get some help. And I was like, hey, I want you to be my manager. And I asked her a few times. She said no, or not right now. But you have to humble yourself enough to be willing to ask for
Yeah.
help. And I think that that's how we got here with Perspective, how we got reconnected from 6 years ago. And so I'm just trying to keep asking the questions, Lee. I'm just trying to keep trying something new, and we'll see where we land,
And that's a lot of the reason why I was so open to. It's not like I'm some fucking gatekeeper of who can and cannot enter the coffee industry. That's not what the reason
Yeah.
I like greenlit what you wanted to do. It's because
Yeah.
the industry is saturated
Yep.
at a time when the industry has been flattened.
You might not be the gatekeeper of the coffee industry, but I think you're like the gatekeeper of what the coffee industry needs.
Thank you, sir. That humbles the shit out of me when you
Right?
say
Like,
that.
I think gatekeepers get this term where they become like the gatekeeper of the sheep herd. So it's like, come in if you do it my way.
Yeah.
You know what I
Well, I'm
mean?
not
Like,
telling you.
and I think,
I'm not telling
and
anyone to
nah,
do it that way.
you're like,
Yeah.
and you're like, no, like you can do a completely different route. And so I don't think you're the gatekeeper of the coffee industry. I don't know where they came from, or in any industry, from my career as an artist and working in the exhibition space and in the gallery space. Like, I don't know where all these gatekeepers come from, but I'm saying, like, just like fuck the gatekeepers and let's do it the way that we want to do it. And if it doesn't, I think, and it's an American thing, I know it is, but everybody's trying to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos. And I picked this up from my time in Japan, like just operate in your capacity. Like you have here in America, people take millions and billions of other people's money, fuck over a company in a month, and then they're in debt and in legal fees and in attorney stuff for the rest of their life because they're trying to explode and expand and blow up and open stores and have 1,000 different products. And I'm like, man, listen, like you can do this thing one drip at a time. It'll take longer. My mentor, Seth Godin, talks about that often. Like It'll take longer if you do it one drip at a
Yep.
time, sure. But sometimes that route is the safer route for you to get to the place that you feel intentionally good about. And so that's what Sekou and I are trying to do. And quite frankly, that's what I've always wanted to do my entire career as a creative and designer and entrepreneur, everything. It's like, I'm cool with taking the longer route if I can arrive at a place at the end that I feel good about.
That was the other inspiring thing about this project.
Mm.
When I heard, I heard that you wanted to go on this venture, the immediate thought that I had wasn't about whether you should or whether you shouldn't do it. The immediate thing I got was, how exciting is this? He's tried to do so many things and now he's ready.
And I think, and Lee, to be honest, I think that when you look back at all of it, there were all lessons to help me become here, to be here right now. Like everything that I've learned from, education, from design, from being a gallery director, from building the gallery, all the things that I've done in my life, owning clothing lines, hosting parties, being a brand marketer, a manager, the things that I've learned, they're a combination of what it's going to require to contribute and make sure that Sekou and I can always meet at an intersection and do the thing that we really love. Right. And that's innovate and bring excellence to the table. So
because, in our group, we talk a lot about friction, right? Mm-hmm. And with all the things that you've done, what it feels like to have tried to move too quickly and create too much friction in your life. You know what it feels like not to have enough friction because that makes you too comfortable and ends you up in doing things that cause addiction and things like that. Oh. But there's a real art and skill to understanding how to provide the right amount of friction that's just a little bit over what you can handle.
But I think that only comes from doing all of the shit, right? Like you don't land that. That's what I'm talking to my son about right now. Like I think the younger generation, they want it all figured out right now.
Didn't
and I'm like,
we
man,
all when
enjoy
we were the
ride.
younger generation though?
We did, but we didn't have social media because right now you can pull up your phone and see somebody and be like, man, they've been getting it for a while. Like, look at this Tesla, look at him.
And it's all fake.
Excuse me. It's all smoke and mirrors, man. And I'm like, yo, just enjoy the process. And so to be here is a process and where we're going is a process. And I'm just excited to be able to do it each day. And, all this, the combination of my career, everything that I'm doing from my design agency to Perspective Roasters to Reggie Black, the artist, like, I'm just happy to be able to do it all. And I always say this, that I have an obligation to prove to the blessings and the universe and God, all the things, because I'm trying to find myself where I fit in religion. So I just always throw it all out there. It's all the things.
All of the religions, all of the gods, all of the woo-woo.
I want to meditate and pray and go to the temple all on the same day because I need all the help I can, right? Like I'm not one anything. I think that's what
I'm everything and nothing all at the same time.
I'm an everything and nothing at the same time. And so my obligation
to all those
over
things, now. We said everything we need.
my obligation to all those things is to make sure that I do the due diligence to what's the word I'm looking for? Do the due diligence to prove the reason that I was the one that chosen to succumb all the things that I have. I almost died and I crashed a car on the bridge.
Wow.
On the Bay Bridge. Like I'm not supposed to be here. 2017, I fell asleep behind the wheel, crashed 4 cars in the middle of a bridge over top of a bay of water, the Bay Bridge that connects Maryland to Delaware. Coming home from our homecoming in Delaware State and fell asleep and ran head onto a car,
Everyone survived?
And everyone survived. At the time, my girlfriend was in the car. She was asleep. But yeah, so I'm saying all that to say, like, all the things that I've surpassed and overcome, there has to be a reason that I'm still here to be able to be on this podcast, tell this story, launch this venture, keep being Reggie Black, keep waking up every day and trying hard. So I'm like, let's just keep trying to figure it out and don't give up on that.
I ask other people this question when I talk to them, whether it's on the podcast or not, but I'm always fascinated because I ponder this quite a lot on myself. If you had have known it was going to be this hard, if you, I mean, none of us started none of us started on the path of doing hard shit expecting it to be easy.
Sure.
But none of us could have expected it was going to be as hard as it was.
Nah. But and I'll tell you, like, and this might sound I'll do it all again the same way. Like if someone's like, all right, like just rewind, I'll take the same road again. 300%. I don't know another way, Lee. Like I grew up around entrepreneurship. Washington, D.C. was black. It was owned by black people. I grew up walking in school, seeing every business in my neighborhood being owned and open at 8 a.m. by a black person. I'm talking about black bank, black barbershop, black funeral home, black grocery store, I mean, everything. I grew up in Northwest DC, and everywhere I turned in the 90s, DC was Chocolate City. That's that's where the name came from. And so I very early, I just knew that this was the thing for me. I couldn't figure out or wrap my brain around doing anything else. And so my love is really like starting businesses and seeing how far we can push things and seeing how far we can take things. Like that's all I'm trying to do. Like that's all I really want to do. And, with the excellence that Sekou's bringing to the table with roasting profiles and teaching me roasting. And I'm like, all right, let's push it. Like, let's see where we can go. And while we're going there, the world will get a hint of the artistic approach that I know that I can bring to the table from the coffee world as well,
So let's tell people a little bit about the brand, because when we sat down and started like brainstorming this shit, the first thing that we said was, this is not a coffee brand for the coffee industry.
It's not it's a multimedia brand, and people. We had like a standing huddle this morning. Sekou and I, we try to get on the phone a couple minutes in the midst of our crazy ass days just to recap and talk about. And he said something this morning. He was like, man, everybody just wants to know what it is. And that couldn't have been a better feeling.
Yeah.
Because I love when people don't know what the fuck is going on, which is why I didn't tell a lot of people, which is why I don't talk about. And that's been a rule. My mom has this saying, if you don't tell people your dreams, they can't shoot them down.
Yeah.
And so I never really as we were building it, we kept our head down. We didn't say anything to many people. We didn't talk about it to a lot of people. And so when you just wake up and you see on your Instagram or whatever social you saw it on or however you found out, you realize that Reggie Black is starting a coffee company. Well, that was intentional because I don't like putting my dreams out into the world and it having a different energy.
The juju.
Nah, I don't want the juju. I never want the juju.
We want the gods. We want the all of that, but we don't want the bad juju.
And so to protect that, I just rather not say anything. And I know it's strange for some people because there's people that I know and probably talk to every day. And
that's
know
a man who's well traveled in the journey of doing hard shit that understands that.
Thank you. So yeah, the multimedia approach of the brand is that, whatever we want to do, there'll be a podcast. We're talking about a magazine. We're talking about so many different things. And that's what I love because, talking to you in the initial stages of it, it's like you can do whatever you want on the premise that coffee is just kind of the nucleus of it.
It's the ticket you don't even into have the journey.
Right?
It's the ticket into the journey. When we were talking about it, we were like, okay, so there's so much about, and we should stop talking code. So for anyone who hasn't been to the website, go to perspectiveroasters.com and you will see, first of all, a beautifully designed website. But second of all, you'll immediately get to understand the heart of what this is about. And when we were coming up with like, what is the special in Perspective Roasters? And it just strips all the shit back and just says, here we have an artist and an analyst, and they are going to talk about things that matter to them.
I remember writing up some of the draft one time and we got on the phone. I sent it to Sekou. He looked over it, probably wasn't satisfied with it. Probably not. And, I told my wife, we was talking over it a little bit, and then I got on the phone with you. And I do this often, and I know I do it often, and I think it's almost like I'm always like a 67 Chevy or something. I just need a moment to warm up. Like my
Yeah.
first drafts are so far off.
It's
They're
the
where they
creative
should be.
process, dude.
Oh man, I didn't realize how far I'm always off. So, I mean, in design and typography and my personal commission work and how I've been able to excel as an artist, I can kind of nail it on the first or second try. But when I'm doing like strategy work and brain work, I realize how far I'm off. So I had this document running, and I shared it with you. I shared it with Sekou, shared it with my wife, and I think the overall arc was like, man, like you got to go back and do that shit again.
But then in one
And I tell
conversation,
in one conversation, because I was trying to avoid who we were.
yeah,
I was trying to
you had this long rollout plan,
subconsciously.
right?
Yeah, and you don't need it.
No.
Not when you're trying to come in and be as special and innovative and different as we are. Like we are enough. We're showing up with the transparency model. We're showing up saying we don't know what the hell we're doing, but at the end of the day, when this thing is all said and done, we're going to know what we're doing. We will be the best at being the best that Perspective Roasters can be. We will have components to the brand that no other brand will have, and then some brands will copy it. Like I'm positive that the combination of the data analytics that Sekou wants to bring into and the things that he shares with me from the roasting profile, I immediately go to, well, how can we design something so that the everyday consumer can understand the data, right?
Oh yeah.
How can we kind of create this whole experience that if you have, because specialty coffee, it's like, wine for most people. They don't understand that, there's so many nuances that go into the grapes and the fermentation and you know what I mean? Like anything specialty. I ride a Brompton bike, which is made by hand, and it's a cult. And everybody that has a Brompton understand that it's a folding bike and there's handlebars differently. So every cult thing has layers to it.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that the layers are presented in a way that whether you're coming from Dunkin' Donuts coffee and you're trying to come up to some sort of specialty entry in the space, you can come in and not feel like it's intimidating. It's the same approach that I had growing up with, and all of it is connected to when we talk about the layers of experiences, I vividly remember going to galleries and exhibitions and knowing that I couldn't afford anything on the wall. But there's a guy dressed in all black, not me, because I dress in all black, but there's a guy dressed in all black standing there watching you, knowing that you're intimidated by the prices on the wall,
Yeah.
and you're completely ostracized from the
Yeah.
experience. So you have to leave feeling like shit. Well, I think that that's what happens. And I know that's what happens, especially with Black people, when we look at a space. Well, the coffee shop can be designed and plotted right in the middle of our community, but we'll walk past it and we'll look into it because we're intimidated by the design. We're intimidated by the way people look when they're sitting in there. Everybody's in there on the fancy laptop, so they think that they don't belong. And I'm saying, like, just strip all the nonsense away and make something accessible that everybody can enjoy. Say the Perspective Roasters, we're in this interesting spot where we have an audience that understands specialty coffee, but we also have an audience that drinks a Keurig or whatever it's
Yeah.
called at home. And so they have no reference point of what real and good coffee is. And so we're saying, like, how do we meet both of those people in the middle? And I personally believe you meet that through accessible design. You give
Yeah.
something that people can enjoy no matter where they are on the journey. So that's really the nucleus of what we're trying to do.
Something that I was immediately attracted to with your plan and why we just like slashed so much out of what you were
So
trying to
much.
do was because at the heart is this analyst who has spent years traveling the globe
Yep.
and
Yep.
really knows his shit. And this creative who has spent years traveling the world and knows his shit. And all we needed to do was clear the road for you
Yeah.
and just say, you don't need to try to convince anybody of anything.
Yeah.
Just go and be
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. And I thank you for that. I really do. Because I
You're
think I
welcome,
was
man.
trying to I was trying to get in the coffee industry from the back door,
Yeah, you didn't need that.
but not really acknowledge that I was going through the back. It's like going through the alley
Yeah.
and then performing on stage or something like
But
that.
life has
And then I
informed
realized we
you.
didn't need it.
Life
Yeah,
has informed you that that's the way that
yeah,
you need to approach life. As a black man,
yeah,
coming
yeah,
through the front door
yeah.
isn't what you've been encouraged to do.
Mm,
So it isn't
mm,
surprising that you thought
yeah,
when you come into a new industry, you have to
yeah,
justify your existence and why you want to
yeah.
be here.
That's such a good point, and I didn't even think of it that way. But you're absolutely correct. It makes so much sense on how I approach a lot of things. Not so much anymore, just because when you do as much as I can, as much as I have the privilege of doing, you realize that sometimes you just deserve to be where you are, and when
Yep.
it's your time, it's your time. And I think for coffee, because we were quote unquote the new kids on the block, I was like, oh well, let's just be cordial about going in.
Yeah.
And you were like, nah, you
No,
just
no,
gotta
fuck that. You've
just kick
earned
in the
this.
front door. Like, yeah, yeah. And so that was empowering. And when we got back to the second version of all the brand lingo and the ethos statement that's on our website, I think it's just probably one of the most beautiful things we've come up with together. And I was like, all right, that's it.
It's
That feels good.
inspiring. Like
Yeah.
when you look
Yeah.
at it, I was showing it to Ann Cooper yesterday. Shout out to our wonderful
Hmm.
friend
Yeah.
Ann.
Shout out to
Yeah.
Ann. Shout out to Ann.
Anne is coaching Sekou with roasting in the
Yeah.
group coaching that
Yeah.
we've got for roasters. And Anne and I were having a chat yesterday, and I said, "Did you see they launched the website?" And she went there and she looked at it and she's like, "Oh, I want to know everything now." She's like, "This is so
Yeah.
exciting. This is so like it
Yeah.
just makes me so curious. It looks beautiful, and I want to know everything."
Wow. Yeah,
And
that's been the overall notion of
yeah,
the site yesterday. People just want to know so much. And
and
yeah. I'm
kudos
sorry,
to
go ahead.
both of you because you landed exactly where you chose to land. You didn't land where you think
Yeah.
the industry needs you to land, where you think I need you to
Yeah.
land. You didn't land where
Yeah.
anyone needed you to land. You landed
Yeah.
where you've chosen to land. And I mean, from
Yeah.
being in our coaching groups and from me personally knowing me and
Sure.
what Map It Forward's
Sure.
about, it's all we want. We want people to be
Yeah.
intentional, independent thinkers.
Yeah.
Figure out what
Yeah.
the
And I
fuck you
think
want to
that
do and get there.
that's it. That's it. You don't have to do because whatever you want to do, it's already probably occupied or taken. So just figure out who you are and be the best person at that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a core eye opener for me as I was doing a lot of the creative writing and trying to get a lot of the language that's on the site. We were struggling with our bios. We was like, oh, we don't want to dress it up too well. We don't want to dial it down. And then it just came to this midpoint where everything just felt really well and everything just felt really good. And it was in the fourth quarter. It was in the late hour, and we were like, "Man, like, all right, this is it." Like, it get to a point where you can't fuck with the seasoning anymore.
I've
You
got
know what
to
I'm
tell you,
saying?
the secret sprinkle on the final part of it was the landing photo
Yeah.
on the website.
Yeah, man, you know what? And that almost didn't happen. That's an interesting story. So
Go
we
ahead.
as I was designing the website, I'm super clean.
Yeah.
I try to keep everything in grids and black and white. And I had sent it over to Sekou, and my wife looked at it, and Sekou's lady looked at it, and they were all like on board together, and I was the only one that's like, oh, it just needs to be a white page. And they were like, but that shit's kind of boring.
You're
And
like,
then I was
trust
like,
me, I'm
oh,
the
okay.
designer.
I'm like, trust me, I'm the
I
designer. I
know
know
this
what I'm
shit. This
talking
is my
about.
jam,
Yeah, I know.
people.
I know this. And no, but they were right. I think Stephen Miller shot the photos for it. Shout out to Stephen. He's a good friend of mine and a co-founder of a co-working space that I'm here in partner that I'm part of in DC. And we reached out to Stephen because I've always loved his work, just the edginess of it. And I had the concept of the shoot locked in my head. It was inspired by like um, black and white and Miles Davis photo. And you had pointed out the photo that I have on my IG stories that I shot with Jordan Kirk in New York when I was speaking at Ad Week. He was like, man, you got to try to do something like that.
Yeah.
And Jordan, like, he blew that shit out of the water. We shot that at the Lincoln Center in New York during our time in for Ad Week. And when I reached out to Steven, I was like, hey, I want it edgy, I want it grainy, I want it black and white. He's like, oh man, I know the perfect spot. And so we got together one Sunday afternoon and went out. And honestly, that's when I felt the cylinders clicking.
Yeah.
Because it didn't take long for the shoot. Like we were in and out. So who showed up? We did what we were supposed to do. We got the perfect shots. That one that's on the landing page that looks like we're about to drop a hip hop album or some shit. We
It really does.
I promise you, like if this all fails, we're going into music. We're going like
I'll be able to help there.
we're just gonna rap about some senseless shit and how to throw a lot of money and blow VC money. I'm gonna come up with a cool name for our new group.
We'll go present it at TED.
Yeah, and I'm gonna present it at TED. Hey, I want to do another TED talk. It's not like the one.
Oh, we're gonna talk about
not
that.
like,
trust me.
Yeah. So yeah, that landing page, man, that was the secret sauce on it, and that's not me. But once again, that's me being honest enough to step out the way. I'm all about the end result and improving the end result, and I know that the way that I do certain things might not be the way certain people want to see it or would like to see it. But I'm always about enhancing the final result. And so when I realized that it was 3 against 1, I was like, all right, Reg, you're wrong on this one. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's the important part about having done this before, right? You know how to collaborate. You know how to hear what people want, and you know when to just surrender to that. But you also know when not to surrender to that. Like, you know when, hold on, this is important enough that I know I'm not going to let this one go.
Yeah. Well, we talk about the P a lot, the monogram in our logo. Thank you. We wrestle. Well, say cool, wrestle with me. I'm not moving on it. We wrestle with that for a long time, and there's some things I know what I know, and I'm like, man, like, bro, just trust me on this one, and he's trusting me on it, and that's been one of the standout compliments of the brand thus far is our monograph, and I've studied all the great designers. I know how to take something and make it iconic, because I feel like for a brand to cut through the clutter, you have to be able to get it immediately. And I think that that's what I was able to do with our identity. And you know, collaborating is important, because I think that once I started getting the feedback from the website and the language, it's like, all right, man, you just got to get out the way and let the overall energy take over. Design is one of the only few careers that you can help yourself and help others, because it's teaching you a lot. It's like, all right, like you gotta like rethink something or have another weapon in the toolbox to pull out when you need to pull it out in certain instances. And then it's also helping, you know, in this case, the client, which the client is us. But if I was working with another client, it's helping them achieve their goals. So it's a two-way street in design, and which is why like I'm honored to be in this position. You're always learning about yourself, because I could have got mad and been like, you guys don't understand me. Fuck this shit. I'm leaving. I'm slamming the door. You know what I mean? Most people,
inexperienced like, when they people do that. People who don't know how to do hard shit do that, which is why I said to you, no, you should do this. Don't be afraid of it. You've done hard shit. You understand what's ahead of you, and you're going to be able to get the fuck out of your own way.
And I've been committed to making sure I do that, because there's moments in my life where I have been in my own way, you know, and I knew I was, and we all have, right? Like, and so I'm like, all right, like if that's what it is. But the website I'm sincerely proud of.
You should be. It's one of the best websites I've seen designed, particularly in coffee.
Thank you. And for me, I'm like, how can we, to that statement, I'm like, I don't want it to look like a coffee brand.
And it doesn't.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, it just we can't have like the stock photos of coffee beans. And I just like, it has to have a fresh look. And I typically, the website will evolve into color and will show the world the beautiful colors that we've explored. But for me, black and white doesn't lend any distractions. People ask why I live in black and white, why my work is in black and white, because the color can make you feel a certain way. If that website was in red, you would be drawn into the energy.
Yeah.
Or if it was in blue, you would come in there and have a calm experience, or green or neons or whatever. Color theory sends the mind and the brain on a certain trajectory. But black and white is a uniform, and you have to have an independent thought about what you're seeing. There's nothing there to guide you. There's absolutely, it's
I
like,
love that.
it's like writing on a page. Like, we have black ink and white paper. That's why a blank page is so scary for most people. They can't sit with themselves and write their own thoughts because it's in black and white. But if I gave you a red pen, you'll be on fire, and you can write like the next Stevie Wonder hit, because you just feel like red can send that emotion to you.
Wow.
Your brain, it's a color theory study that I've learned and incorporated from my own work, because Reggie Black, the artist, used to work in color.
Is
heavy,
it a
and I had
kinesthetic thing?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's kinesthetic. It's a kinesthetic thing. It's color theory. It's there's another term for it. I'm drawing a blank. But mostly, primarily kinesthetic and color theory, and having a membrane connection to colors. But black and white doesn't lend that. So when you look at something that's black and white, you have to form an independent thought around it. And I'm saying, okay,
shit. You know that.
yeah, right. Like, so when you see us, you're going to see us for who we are, and it's up to you to form that opinion about what we are doing. There is no fancy colors running around. I don't want to spin you on a loop. I want you to see it, digest it, be able to pull back and scale and see the whole landing page, which is why we have that beautiful black brick wall, Sekou and I dressed in black and white. Like, all of it was intentional. And I think that, at least for announcement, right? Because you only get one chance to make a first impression. And that was my fear too. And I'm like, all right, well, you got to go out in the world at some point. Remember, we were talking, I was like, oh, we'll be ready soon. And then that soon came, and I was like, oh, we'll be ready soon again.
Yeah, and I was not okay with that. I was quite the tyrant when it came to that. I was a gentle tyrant, but I'm like, listen, you and I know how this goes. You can keep saying soon, you can keep saying soon, you can keep saying soon.
Yeah.
Why don't you come on the podcast and announce it? And then you're like, what?
I guess I got to make soon sooner.
That's my job as a coach, right? Like,
that was perfect.
A gentle little push of like, listen, I genuinely believe that this is a fantastic idea.
Thank you.
And
thank you.
In order to show you how seriously I believe in that, come have a chat with me on the podcast and tell the world about it.
Well, my wife kept saying, well, when are you guys launching? And then that's when I was like, all right, like, I feel like everybody's waiting on me, but nobody wants to push me and be like the asshole. But
I'll happily be the asshole anytime.
It started feeling very asshole-ish, if that's a word.
I was feeling asshole-ish.
Yeah, so it's like, all right, like let's put the head down and say, "Cool, push me," and we got there. We got there. Nobody saw the site, but he and I, my wife, his lady, they saw it. But I try to keep things confined, because when you have too many cooks in the kitchen, it deters your agenda.
And it didn't need it. Like, I feel like what needed to happen here was everyone needed to get out of the way, and all the thoughts needed to get out of the way, and you just needed to take the concept and just do it. Because the last 20 years of your life have informed, you and Sekou have informed what needs to happen here. You're not figuring this out for the first time. You know how to build a website. You know how to present a brand. You know how to roll this shit out. None of this is new learning for you. And I feel like you just needed someone to push you in that direction so that you could realize, hold on, I know how to do this. I'm just going to do it. And the great thing about when you do look at what's happening here on the website is you now have to live up to this, Reggie and Sekou, because I know Sekou's listening. And that's the best part about it is the foundation that you've laid and the potentiality for what could unfold in this brand over the years.
Yeah.
I mean, this business has a 30-year potential. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Lee. We're looking to really slow walk and go on a marathon with this company, and we're in no rush. I think that's why we choose the model that we've chosen, consulting with you, like we knew that. So from my world of like street culture and clothing and exclusive releases, I was like, man, like what if we do this shit in seasons? And you were like, what? And I was like, well, like you said, well, like exhibitions. I said, yeah, like imagine like something not being able to be consumable anymore. Like, what if it's just because you can't put your bag on the shelf and just constantly turn it out, hoping that people will buy the same blend over and over again. People do it. It's how we got here in the coffee industry today. If you have something special like Elixir, you cut through it,
Yeah.
right? But if you have 1,000 beans on the shelf and you like pick one, and I learned this from Brett from Surasia during my time in Thailand. The first week I got to Thailand through those 3 shops that I was at. And he said, man, you know, the beautiful thing about coffee in Asia is that it doesn't compete. And I said, what a beautiful thing. Because here in America, everybody. So Brett's theory, shout out to Surasia Coffee and Brett, he told me that, you know, coffee doesn't compete because every shop is known for a specific thing. So on Monday, you might feel. So on Monday, you might be feeling an espresso and you go to your favorite shop on street A, right? But on Tuesday, you just like the music that they play in shop B. So you go there and you might not really be feeling the coffee all the way, but you know, you can get an iced coffee, have a good vibe, see a cool barista, get some warm charm. And then Wednesday, you want a latte and you know the shop on 34th Street, they offer an amazing latte. So there's a circulation of income and money that goes through the coffee community in Thailand. And I saw it in Melbourne too. Like literally you walk down a little laneway and there's 1,000 fucking coffee shops all on the same street and they're all busy. Here in America, it's like, well, if I pick this one, I'm taking away. It's just this dog eat dog mentality that we have in America. And so I took that from that first week. Mind you, this was 2014 when Brett told me that, and I vividly remember this conversation. Coffee doesn't compete. And so for Sekou and I, we were like, let's not try to get in the compete game. If we step back and build a brand that's on exclusivity and build an experience around exclusivity, people are more excited about than they are about like the purchasing of it. Like, how do you get excitement around the process? Right? Like it's coming. We're building a profile. We went to Vermont to look at, you know, importers. Like we're documenting all of that and giving people a transparent message behind it, so that by the time the product arrives at their home, they've been enjoying it for the past 3 months because they watch us build it. And so that's the superpower for us.
I think there's an even bigger superpower for you. Because yes, that's a superpower. And, you know, we talk a lot about superpowers. You guys have many superpowers. The added superpower of this brand is that you can take this ticket into this experience, which is the coffee.
Sure.
And you can extrapolate it into discussion and perspectives about social commentary.
Really, that's a huge component of what we want to do. You know, Sekou now we have several different missions that we care about. Mental health, Sekou women's rights. Of course, we cannot ignore the social injustices to Black men. So we got to
100%. And women.
And women.
Black women.
Black women. We have to talk. We have to talk
trans,
about
and all of it.
Say that trans, we have to talk about it all. We have to talk about it all. And what better way to use a quote unquote product that people consume on a daily basis to raise awareness of something. And so that's the interesting thing about the seasons, is that season 1, we could talk about social injustice. And then season 2, we can be talking about just, I don't know, ocean conservation or something, right? Like, or the, you know, the waste in plastic and how we have a huge like waste problem in the recycle industry. And like, so we're using coffee to talk about topics that we care about, that we want to spark awareness of the conversation. You know, it could be
and
mental health.
Not in a tacky way.
No, not in a.
That's the difference here.
You can't do it because that's what we're seeing right now. And we've talked about this too, right? Like everybody's trying to figure out a way to check their black box. So white companies are calling Black artists to hurry up and do something so they can look like they're speaking up for the Black Lives Matter movement, or they act like they care for the social injustice that's going on because they realize that when they pull back all the layers, they haven't been doing any fucking thing.
Yeah.
Like, holy shit, we got to get somebody black real quick to
Right.
speak on behalf, and we all can call them out. We can all see and they might genuinely care, but they don't know how to disseminate and discern that specific approach because they've never had to deal with it. So like, how do we even deal with black? Like, there's no black training program in the company. We don't even know what to do. So we're watching in every industry, right? Like, that's why we have so many public statements coming out from the CEOs and from, the heads of corporate and the heads of this. Everybody's trying to figure out a way to delicately offer a helping hand to the Black Lives Matter movement, or just to social injustice as a whole, because they realize that they haven't done a lot of work in it, or whatever the movement is. COVID has offered I don't know, man, what this thing has done. It's lifted a veil. It's lifted a veil. It's
exposed
it's exposed and highlighted all the fractures of the world. That's what it's done. Those were the words I was looking for. It's highlighted all the fractures of the world, and everybody's scrambling to the drawing board because did any of us expect this to happen? Could we have saw this in 100 years? Of course not. But we have horrible leadership who's continuing to just like drag this thing on, and no one's taking it serious. And even to this day, I was listening to, I don't know if it's one of your most recent podcasts where you were talking about, even to this day, some people think that this shit isn't real.
Oh yeah, man.
And I'm like, well,
it's actually accelerating now. That Ghislaine Maxwell has been arrested, the number of people that are saying to me, see, we told you this shit was fake. What the fuck does one thing have to do with the other?
With the other, yeah. The science doesn't lie. The death tolls don't lie. The cases don't lie. And so you have so many people who are just constantly trying to avoid this. And I think, Lee, people are trying to avoid it because we don't want to change. We would rather everybody's in a rush to get back to the way things.
Hey, Reggie. I think you're...
Just jump back to the way things were.
Are you back with us?
I'm back. I don't know
awesome.
where.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I think the challenging thing about all of this has been the fact that people have felt the intense discomfort. And by people, what I mean is the majority of society has avoided doing hard shit and being uncomfortable for an incredibly long time. This forced people into discomfort. It forced them without any choice into doing hard shit. And they said, no.
Yeah.
Not
they
would
would just rather go. They would rather go back to the way things are. We're all in a rush. People are in such a rush to get back to the way things are because no one wants to create a new. It's like it's lazy. I'm saddened by so many things that have crumbled down on our heads as a result of this. But I think that this is what we needed because this is probably the only thing, when you think about right now, literally like the world is on holiday. It's that weird ass time of the year.
Really
like,
wish I was on a holiday.
I
don't.
But I mean, like,
I feel like those of us who are some of us. But you're right. Like it's on pause.
It's that weird time of the year, like in holiday, like during Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, where everybody's just kind of
You're all
in
about
and out.
all the religions, aren't you?
And listen, I'm trying to find it all. Listen,
you're just trying not to get canceled.
I grew up Christian, and my grandfather was a Muslim, and so like I would listen to Farrakhan sermons and my pastor's sermons in the same day. But like, wait, they saying the same thing.
You were all about inclusivity. You're about the only person. Black men are about the only people who are not allowed to be cancelled right now. Everybody else are up for being cancelled. So you're safe,
you're not canceled.
Don't worry, I'm going to get cancelled for having just said that.
You're not canceling us, man. Because we built this country. No one's canceling us.
No.
Man. Like
No.
No one's canceling us. We can't. Well, I won't get into it. Never mind. I was going to say we could. There is one that should probably cancel, but never mind.
Hey, let's
Yeah.
just avoid that one.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
it's one of those times where I think that those who have, and I know I keep talking about doing hard shit, but it's important. I mean, those people who have understood the rhythm of friction and understood what's on the other side of learning to move in flow with the friction that's created in your life, you can actually, I mean, that's how you build momentum and wealth in your life currencies, right? Like the shit that really, really matters.
Yeah.
Like the pride that comes from building something that you value.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're spot on there. And I discovered life currencies through conversations with you. And, everybody has a different term for them, but I think the way that you break them down, it really makes it plain to see like what's really important.
Thank you.
And then from there, you can get rid of all the fluff. I had a lovely conversation with a good friend of mine, Delano, who is in that same group of meet and say cool at the same time. We both got married around the same time. And I think his parents have been married for like 40, 50 years, something like that. And Mr. Hunter was outside and he was like, we asked him like, well, what's the key? And he was like, remember the 10%. And we was like, what? He was like, it's only 10% of shit you really care about in life.
Yeah.
Hold on to that. The other 90, like let that shit go. You know what I mean? And so when you talk about life currencies, everybody has a funky way of bringing it home. But when you talk about life currencies, it's like, okay, well, what do you really care about? And then I think you can build a framework around your life to support those things that you truly care about. I got tired of trying to be cool, which is why I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to wear all black.
Yeah.
Because I'm not keeping up anymore. You know what I mean?
By the way, you're one of the coolest people I know, just so that you know.
I mean, you know what I mean? Like trends
I
and
hear
sneakers. I'm just like, I can't do that. Like you have to live a very intentional life about the things that matter. Freedom is important to me, right? So what does freedom look like? That doesn't, don't go out and consume and get a lot of debt and buy things that you can't afford. And so because you want to have the freedom, if you say, oh, tomorrow you want to get on a plane, well, we can't get on planes right now. But if you wanted to get on a plane and travel somewhere, you could because you had a little bit saved and you're not like jammed up to the point where you're living on meager times or paycheck to paycheck, whatever you want to call it. And you have to sacrifice. I think people want everything all the time. I spent a large percentage of my life eating shit, like just taking the scrap work, opening mail at temp agencies and working like odd jobs and working at Halloween costume stores and all sorts of stuff. Man, I think people want everything all the time and they don't want to sacrifice. Like when you think about Sekou's story, he came from Delaware to DC to pursue his career and lived in a multitude of spaces that he probably didn't want to live at. I'm telling his story just because
he'll come on the podcast and tell his story soon. I'm trying to wrangle him into that. I know he's listening and I want him to hear this. Dude, you need to make it sooner rather than later because I got to tell you, you used a term, a lovely conversation you said you had a lovely conversation with someone. And you know that one of my favorite things to do is have great conversations.
Yeah.
Sekou is someone who I have great conversations with. I have lovely conversations with him.
He's a great guy to talk to, man.
Because he doesn't talk shit.
No, he'll take you on a ride. Yeah, he'll take you on a ride, man. I can't wait. We talk about often one of the things that I want to make sure that this brand stays true to, and I'm going to do everything I can for it to happen. Sometimes when you build a brand, one person is like the spokesperson, right? Like you'll see how some people just take the light and then anything that they're talking about the brand, they ask for that person to come. I want to respectfully make sure that everybody knows about both of us. Now, sure, there's certain things that I can speak on that's more important if we're talking about branding and identity and, visuals and design and packaging and all that jazz. And then there's certain stuff that Sekou can speak on that's roasting and content and moisture content and elevation and all the beautiful terms that go into our roasting profiles. But I want to make sure that people know that this is a team effort and no one's here for an ego.
But
And
that's the
so
genius about the way the brand's been set up. You're very clear that the perspective of this
Yep.
company comes from different directions.
Yep. And in the middle of that is the void. Like the middle of that is the void that we want people to enter with us and say, oh man, like I'm gonna form my own thing. I think Sekou was saying that you guys had a good conversation and just about like how all this shit is subjective. Like you don't have to, the coffee that I'm consuming right now could taste completely different from, it can taste completely different from someone else. They might drink it and be like, oh, well, I taste this or I taste that. And this whole thing is subjective. So why put the rules? Why place the rules?
Yeah, sorry for interrupting you there. I've got a real problem with this idea of good coffee. Because,
please share.
How dare I tell you what good coffee is when my biochemistry, my gut microbiome, my hormones, my mood, my sensory exposure, all of that informs what my judgment is of good coffee.
Interesting.
And your version of all of that will inform what your version of good coffee is.
Sure.
Who the fuck am I to tell you that the coffee that you've given me should be your version of good or bad?
Absolutely. And we highlighted that very early. That was something that Sekou wanted to make sure that we was very adamant about, like just leaving it open for interpretation. Some people brew coffee differently. Yeah. Some people use different water. There's so many different brewing methods. And so like, who are we to tell people what coffee is? And I think when we kind of reverse back and rewind a bit, that probably happened from a lot of the gatekeeperism that was going on. Everybody was just like, oh, well, consume it this way, brew it at this temperature, do it that way, don't ask no questions. And we're like, but did we ever get anywhere important by just doing it the same way? And that's what we're saying with coffee, is that like, what's that? Did we ever get anywhere?
Did we ever get anywhere doing it the same way?
I mean, that's
a fucking t-shirt right there.
That's been my life, man. I believe in, as wild and weird as it feels. I mean, you got to think, like, I owned a fashion line. I was having rooftop fashion shows, some shit that you would see in New York Fashion Week in DC in 2004. I know about being early. I know about missing the mark. I know about being too late. Yep. I know about being in the middle. But all I'm saying is, like, are we going to ever get there doing it the same way? I grew up in a time where no one. Man. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it's just, and I was raised by a lot of older folks, so I knew that it would serve me better to listen than to talk. I don't talk much, surprisingly, right? Like this podcast is, I talk when it matters to people that I enjoy having conversations with. But for a large percentage of my day and time as a designer, as an artist, as a solo entrepreneur with a small team, and we just move in the way we move, I don't talk a lot. And the reason I don't talk a lot is because I would prefer to listen. If you let people talk, you'll learn so much more about them than trying to like have a conversation. And I'll tell you why, because everybody has something on their heart, but nobody really wants to listen to them. So I prefer to listen.
It's why I needed to do this podcast the way that I do it. Like, a lot of people are like, why do you have such long conversations on these podcasts? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, do you listen to them? Like, yeah, the people you bring on are fascinating. That's why I do that.
That's the point. Yeah.
Because we never really have the space anymore to hear each other.
At all. We're all trying to figure out when to interject. We're not hearing. Like, we're not hearing at all. We're all like, okay, tell me, you went out Friday? Okay. Did you go to a restaurant? Right? Like, we're all trying to find a moment to interject and project what we feel about a specific thing, or forecast what we believe on a specific thing. And I prefer to take the opposite approach and just listen to things, like, because we're all going through something that can inform another human conversation or human emotion. And when we bring it plain and home, that's what coffee does for everybody. You know, the coffee shop is the mecca of conversations. It's the
like the
place that,
canvas, right? It
man,
provides it facilitates the canvas that
yeah,
creates the potential for any perspective to come forward.
in anything. And that's what we want to do, you know. And fortunately and unfortunately, that the coffee shop, I don't know what the new coffee shop will look like, the model of a coffee shop, if we'll ever like be able to sit down in them and open our laptops, at least in the foreseeable future, right? Like, I think that notion is gone. And so like now that we have to, everybody in the industry is being forced to rethink the way we make coffee consumable and enjoyed in everybody's respective locations. That's the challenge now. How do you facilitate a conversation around coffee while everybody's in various parts of the world?
I've got a few tricks up
And
my sleeve for you on that one. I've been parking them for when you're ready.
I know you do. I know you do. I have some thoughts around it.
Yeah.
They might be tricks. But I know yours might be a bit more seasoned than mine. But I have
bet you
some
they're
thoughts
very aligned. It's
yeah,
all
I have
creative
some
stuff
thoughts.
about that's going to
Yeah,
happen, like secret squirrel all over the world.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
exciting. I mean,
yeah.
you know, as this brand
We can't
grows.
rely on the four walls anymore. You know, we can't rely on the four walls. We can't expect people just to walk up. You know, business just got harder for everybody. You know, like
Oh yeah.
we used to be in the attention business. Now we're moving to the intention business. Like,
Ooh,
are you doing it? Are you
attention
doing it
versus
for attention?
intention.
Because think about it. Think about it. Like most coffee shops, I don't know who they are, but they're all out there. Most coffee shops got some like fancy ass Instagrammable wall that people go to take the photo for, so everybody know that they at that coffee shop drinking a $5, $7 latte, mocha, whatever it is, right? And then there's some people that are just doing it in the shadows, doing just as much as business as the next person, but you never hear about them. And so now I hope with COVID, I hope with the fractures that have been highlighted, people can think more intentional. Like, why are we really doing this? Because now your likes and shit don't mean anything. The influencer culture doesn't mean anything anymore. So now we'll be able to see who's really cool, who's really about it, who can really innovate, who can really stand up on their chops and offer something unique that still carries the same integrity as it once did that Instagram wall. And that's going to be the challenge. That's what I'm excited for. That's what I want to be a part of. Because that was easy. You just needed like a couple million to do that and get a fancy ass wallpaper or an artist to come in and do like a commission wall. And there you go. Hashtag Reggie Black Coffee Shop, and just hope that Instagram picks you up in the algorithms. But to really do something intentional, to facilitate conversation, to re-innovate, to make something worthwhile, to make people feel special when they receive your end result and your product, I think that's going to be hard for a lot of people because they haven't been forced or challenged to do it in a long time.
And do you think authenticity is the secret sauce there?
Yeah, but I think my problem with authenticity, not problem, my beef, this is not a real problem. My beef with authenticity is that everybody throws it around as authentic.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, as someone who like, no one would argue with like, do you think Lee's authentic? Lee ain't fucking scared to say whatever the fuck she thinks.
But then there'll be another person that'll come right behind Lee
and say
and try to pull the same stops.
Oh yeah.
And we're like, wait a second, that's not real.
Authentic. Yeah.
So I think it's the remnants of authenticity. Right? Yeah, it's like inclusivity or social justice, specialty coffee. Let's just do whatever and then let's talk a little bit about the farm, put some little fancy notes on it, and then
pretend we're being transparent, and that's specialty coffee.
Being transparent, that's another and buzzword. We love. Yeah, and so it's
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the moment when people who actually spent time building something real not like splashy brands and Instagrammable walls. And, we started a second business coaching group yesterday. So there's our one, and now we've got a second one.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and this is awesome. So there's someone from Dubai. So in the original, the first group, we've got Angelo and Matteo in Adelaide. We've got Jimmy in Seattle, you in DC, and Jethro's in Mexico, and me here in San Diego. Did I forget anyone?
No, I think
that's the first group, right? Now the second group has Mark from Dubai, Nick from Orange County, and Kevin from Jersey City.
Oh, wow. Okay. I was just in Jersey City. Wow.
And
okay.
so one of the things that we were talking about yesterday was this idea of hospitality and how the authenticity behind that seems to have no longer been cool in hospitality, which is just fucking strange. Like, we're in the industry of hospitality, but someone in the group said yesterday, how come every time I go into a coffee shop, I feel like I've put the barista out because I've asked them for some extra cinnamon, or I've asked them if they could answer a question. Like, how dare I make it difficult for them by asking them a question? And I feel like people in the general public now are being so much more intentional about who they want to support and where they want to spend their money. That how I feel when I go to patron a place means more to me now.
Absolutely. But it means more. You can see it, you can feel it. And right now, with everything being, I guess, inconsistent for a lot of people, and everybody has to rethink their cash flow models and where the money's coming from. You have every dollar matters,
right?
And so I think you're spot on. That's an interesting point. Like, the questions to ask a barista something
but
that's
you get it, right? Like,
yeah, like 300%. Like, it makes a lot of sense, as if we're inconveniencing them.
Yeah. But it's the hospitality industry, and
they should be thrilled to give us the cinnamon.
Well, they should be doing everything they can to make you feel welcome in their home. And we were talking. So Nick, I want to give a shout out to Nick from True Brew, because
shout out to Nick. I don't know. I'm a shout out to Nick.
And the reason is because when I went to True Brew in Orange County, it was the first time I felt like the staff couldn't do enough to make everybody that was there feel welcome. If you ask me, what did you buy when you went to True Brew? I remember the coffee tasted great. I remember the food I ate tasted great. But more than anything, I bought feeling welcomed. That was what I paid for.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, it comes from his Lebanese roots. His cultural roots are everywhere you go. Any Lebanese home you go to, any Arab home you go to, they cannot do enough to make you feel welcome in their home. And he and his mother, that both own True Brew, have translated that experience into the cafe.
One of the things that jumps out immediately when you talk about that beautiful story is that's a moment when you realize that no component of who you are should be left out.
I love that.
Right? Everything you are, whoever you are, whatever you enjoy, you could be in a coffee industry, right? And then love, I don't know, muffins. Or you could be in the coffee industry and have a sincere passion for dolphins. At some point along the journey, your audience and your customers need to see that love.
And that's what I'm saying about the difference between the hacks that have just thought it was
Yep.
cool to get into coffee, and
Yep.
people who have made it a part of their brand themselves, a part of their brand identity as a small
Mm-hmm.
business owner.
Mm-hmm.
For
Mm-hmm.
me, I love sacred geometry. And so every
Hmm.
business I'm involved in, the logo has an element of sacred geometry in it. So
Interesting.
you'll notice that the rings in the Mapper Forward
Mm.
logo, the distance
Interesting.
between from the outer ring to the inside ring is Fibonacci.
Hmm. Hmm. Wow. It's intention.
It's intentionality. So nobody needs to, like, it's not something that we talk about, but
Mm-hmm.
it's an important element for me. And it's a way that
Sure.
I can insert that deep love that I have
Sure.
for numbers and sacred patterns and things like that.
That's
It's a part
beautiful.
of my intentionality.
That's
The
beautiful.
new upcoming project that you know about,
I can't wait.
um,
I want to be.
that's
I
not,
want to be a guest on that one
you
too.
will be on that one. I've already done the graphics for it.
I want to be. I think I want to be a guest on that one more now.
But and it's not anything to do with the coffee industry, but the logo that you saw for that is all
Yep.
sacred geometry as well, and it has an attachment to a sacred number, phi.
Interesting.
So
Wow.
all of that kind of stuff. I mean, nobody listening to this would ever know that I
Mm-hmm.
had this affinity for numbers and numerology and patterns. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was my big thing with music. Like, I saw, some people are
Mm-hmm.
kinesthetic when it comes to music. I see patterns whenever I play a
Interesting.
piece on a piano. I see
Interesting.
the dots forming in a kind of a pattern that creates a sacred shape.
Interesting. That's a great point because I vividly remember being in Tokyo and in Harajuku, actually the brand that I have on. Maybe somehow down the line I can like be an ambassador for them or
Uh-huh.
something because I love this brand. Deus Machina in Harajuku. The coffee shop is a cafe racer,
Uh-huh.
but then they also have a graphic design component to the store where all these beautifully designed posters are in the shop.
Okay.
So like the merch are the merch is consists of like clothing, hats, t-shirts, bags, totes, whatever, and then downstairs there's like a host of motorcycles. I bring this up to say that the moment I saw it, I thought of Sekou because he rides motorcycles, and then I thought of me because I'm sitting in there and it's like an exhibition of poster design, all day use machina, different typography and playful inserts on like culture. And then it's like motorcycles sitting in the middle of a coffee shop.
Yeah, wow.
And so I'm like, whoever thought of that
You
brand,
know
the
what they
sensei put
love.
me on to, what they love, right? And so I think everybody has to bring what they love. And I think for us, with Perspective Roasters, you can see very early and open in the conversation that we care about community, we care about connections, we care about conversations.
And
And you feel
openness
that in and openness because we're leaving a space in the brand to be open for conversation.
from
It's
different
like
perspectives.
here two different dudes in the middle is your conversation,
Gotta
and
tell you.
that's
The reason
I
I'm
guess
laughing
that.
is because Seiko just commented in the live chat and said, shh,
Oh,
more to come.
yeah, my fault, my
We
fault.
hear you,
Yeah, I'm
bro. We'll
sorry, man.
shut up about it
I'm
now.
sorry, man. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. Yeah, like it's but yeah, he got me. But you can talk about it and then they'll see the results. And so yeah, but
I
now we
go ahead.
go ahead. No, I was just gonna say, but just for him to chime in like that. He said he would listen the whole way. I didn't think he would. So that's funny. That's why I'm laughing actually.
Something that I want to make sure, because we're already like an hour and 40 minutes into this chat. How the
That's
fuck that
crazy.
happened, I don't know.
I don't
Um,
well, time flies when you're having
it
fun.
really
I like
does.
that. I like that little old cheesy saying. I don't know where it came from. Is it like a Ford commercial or something? Time flies when you're
Or a
having fun.
Chevrolet or something like that. Who
Yeah,
fucking
one of
knows?
them joints. One of them joints. I love it.
So
Yeah.
I want to talk about your TED Talk.
Oh man. Okay, let's do
Tell
that.
me about that journey, because the one thing that really, I recognize in you from the moment we sat down and had pizza in Bondi that day.
Man, that was a great pizza.
It was a great
That
pizza,
was a
and
great.
like it was one of those nights that I thought I've connected with a human as though whatever religion you want to talk about or spiritual or whatever, hand grabbed this person and grabbed this person and said, you two need to sit down
Yep.
and know each other, and you won't understand
Yep.
why for years to come.
Right now.
And we both.
That's funny. You found that photo.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
found that
Remember
photo.
I shared
Man,
that with you on
crazy.
Instagram.
That's,
I remember
crazy.
that. I mean, and we vocalized it that night, saying, and we had been introduced by a mutual acquaintance, and we knew that night. But here's the thing, I knew that you were someone who was trying to figure out the creative journey the same way that I was, because I was in the music industry at the time and Elixir was just becoming a thing.
Yep.
And I recognized that you knew that failing a lot, or getting up and stumbling and getting up and stumbling and getting up and stumbling was something that you were well versed with, and you knew that wasn't a shameful part of the creative process. You just knew that.
Yeah.
But there is, I mean, and I could also recognize for both of us that we had this kind of sense of, when the fuck is this going to actually happen?
Yeah. We those that. So I got to shout out Seth Godin once again, because there's this beautiful quote: "He who fails more wins."
It's game theory, right?
Right, like he who fails more wins. And I love, so you're right. I think my entire career, and when we met, and then I'll try to connect it to the TED Talk. I've always been committed to the next thing, the next package of lessons that you can learn and apply. So I've always been okay with one thing not working, because it will connect and link somewhere else. Yep. So who I was trying to be when you met me, at the time when we met, I was doing a project, and I don't talk about this often because it ended horribly, and it was like a horrible business move that I made that I'll never make again, but we can talk about it. So for 7 years of my life, a lot of people don't know this. For 7 years of my life, I spearheaded a project called Sticky Inspiration. And what I used to do
the Post-it
you remember
notes.
That? Every morning before 7 a.m., no matter where I was in the world, I would write an original thought on a Post-it note.
Stick it somewhere.
I would stick it somewhere. And at first I wanted to be anonymous, once again, trying to hide from being the artist that you have to be. But then Instagram came around like a month after I started the project, and the 3x3 kind of square just fitted the Post-it note perfect. So I was like, you know what? Fuck it, Black. You got to step up to it and do this thing. And so for 7 years, I would write an original thought inspired by conversation, something. I would write it, stick it on a Post-it note, write it on the wall, take a picture of it, and share it on Instagram. And what happened, those authentic thoughts started to kind of transcend through the internet. So one person would start following, another person would start following. And a friend of mine, I have to shout out Shauna in Houston. I met her when I was traveling. My brother lives in Houston, so I went to stay with him for a bit before I moved to Bangkok. And I met her at a Creative Mornings talk. I was in Bangkok in 2016, I think. And she emailed me. She said, hey, I don't know if you think you can do it, but Ted's starting this new residency that I think you should apply for. And so for those that don't know TED is an organization that focuses on people having one life-changing idea that you want to present to the world. And at that time, when she sent me the email, I was like, I don't have shit I'm just writing on Post-it notes, bro. I have zero money. I'm I don't know how to figure this thing out. I'm coming off of being an alcoholic. I'm trying to get my relationships in order with everybody in my life. What the hell can I offer? But all I was doing at the time was showing up to the point of that word, which I don't really like or have a beef with. I was showing up authentic, what I thought I was, but I wasn't really living the things that I was writing. And so as I was writing these things along the journey, I was like, well, what if I pitch the Sticky Inspiration Project to TED? Like, what if I just say, oh, I'm just this guy writing Post-it notes and I want to share that with the world, not knowing that that would be an instrumental time when I outgrew that canvas too. After I gave that TED talk, I knew I had to be bigger than a
Yeah.
3x3. And so at writing that talk, it's not even about that project. It's about mental health and who I am and what I struggle with. I'm always trying to figure out a way to interject and connect an overall arc by just using a thing that everybody can connect with. And so when you watch the talk, I talk about growing up in the Black community as a Black man, like we can't talk about our feelings. We can't express how hurt we are. We can't talk about how soft we want to be, or if we want to cry. Like all we're taught is to suck it up and be tough. Like deal with that shit later. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Is that because it's a cultural thing, or do you think it's a gender thing?
A cultural thing. If you, I personally believe that on the front of the suck it up, be tough thing might be a Black woman, because you have to remember the role that the role of a Black woman is to protect the family at all costs, because they have to carry the weight. They have to be the mom. They have to be the wife. They have to be all the things to the family because they are the anchor. But I think the man gets it. The man gets the messenger tag, if you will, because he can never show weakness because his strength has to reflect his wife or his girlfriend or his mom. So we can never show a sign of weakness because like there's a fault or there's a leaky faucet in the community or in the family. And so growing up, it's like, oh man, if you get hurt, if you fall down playing football, if you fall down playing basketball, if a girl break your heart, get over that shit and move on. And so in that TED talk, I talk about who's going to speak for that person that has to bottle that shit up and hold it for all their life. Because that's what you realize when someone has an outbreak or they kind of go on the deep end and have like a moment or a spiral. They've been bottled up for years and they didn't have outlets. And so what I'm saying, and so what I don't know how that happened. What I'm saying, it's just like a number popped up as soon as I started talking about mental health.
Well, see, the sacred geometry and numerologist in me would say you should take note of that number and see. We can have a conversation about that off the air.
And so the talk is you know it's an homage to everybody that wasn't listened to. We have to do a better job as Black men to recondition the way that we approach mental health and let people know that it's okay to cry, to struggle, to be depressed. I've lived years of depressed, somewhat bipolar for most parts of my life. I grew up as an extrovert, and I talk about this in the TED Talk, is where I say, I can't remember the words verbatim, but we did have to remember the talk. So that was funny. I grew up as an extrovert, but not really wanting to be an extrovert. It was by design of the community. You go outside, you play basketball. You go outside and you play basketball because that's what all the homies do around the way. But I think I would have personally enjoyed being inside by myself.
Reading books.
But the cultural code doesn't allow you to go inside and read books. So I was an interesting kid because all my homies was out in the streets and doing all the wild things. And I was with them, but then you'll see my report card and I was an honor roll student.
See, this is what I think is going to be fascinating about the Perspective Roasters brand.
Sure.
Is the fact that you have a story and you went on a creative path, right? Yep. Sekou has a story and went on an analytical path. You're both Black men, both come from the same kind of world, and you've ended up with different kind of, I mean, you guys are like best friends and yet you have different perspectives.
It's completely different. It's completely different, man. But there's so many commonalities in it that him growing up in New York and Delaware and me growing up in DC, you'd be like, man, like, did we all come from one big family? And the reality is we did, because the Black culture and the Black community, there's just codes that are, no matter who you are, you get the code. Like you get the email of the, you know what I mean? Like Like, so, you know what I mean? Like every cultural context of a community is the same no matter where you are. And the TED Talk was just a flag, and me putting a flag in the sand saying that no matter what you're going through in life as a black man, like it's
Yeah.
okay. And then we got Drake and we got Kid Cudi and we got a lot of artists that like put it in hip hop. And, now we have a whole genre of emotional rap or whatever they call it. Right. But I think that there was a moment in time that like showing your weakness was considered you being soft. And I was like, yo, that's your superpower. And I often got criticized by a
I'm
lot of
sure you
people
did.
for being soft and being vocal and expressing myself.
Too
And
sensitive,
I'm just
right? You're just too sensitive, Reggie.
sensitive. Yeah, too
You
sensitive.
bloody
Say,
Pisces.
well,
I'm right there
you're a
with you,
Pisces.
though. So
Say who's a Pisces?
yeah, we found that out the other day. The three of us are
Yeah,
Pisces.
so man, like we're gonna need all the religions to pray for us.
For that and many
Yeah,
other reasons.
and all the religions to pray for
But
two Pisces doing
but
business.
when you talk
But
about that, like I look at rappers who I'm actually intrigued by them as humans. People like Tip and Killer Mike and
yep,
Snoop and all that kind of older generation of rappers.
yep,
And
yep.
I look at that and I think that's an interest that they come from a different perspective where being hard
Mm-hmm.
was not only expected, but it was survival for them.
It was
The
survival.
Jay-Z's of
That's
the
right.
world, all of those guys, they were legitimately required to be hard-ass humans just to
Because
survive.
every day you're in fight or flight. A lot of the places and communities that we come from, Tip and Killer Mike in Atlanta, Jay-Z in Brooklyn, you can all
Snoop
the
on
way
the West
down
Coast.
on the West Coast. Every black man grows up in an environment, and we're still seeing it to this day, right? Like all the police brutality that happens in this country is a black man being afraid for his life and kicks into fight or flight mode, and those scenarios go left by police officers, right? Like
Oh,
there
yeah,
is
yeah,
no
yeah.
difference. There is no difference. It could be the same scenario if he thought someone was trying to rob him, he would kick in the fight or flight.
Right.
It's an interaction with a cop, unfortunately. And so then,
The
you
trigger
get some
point
tricky
is
shit
much
that happens.
lower.
The trigger point is the same. And so
Is
we
the
kick
pun.
into fight or flight because we're forced to be tough and be hard because of just being black. It's no
Yeah.
other reason. It's just being a black man. That's a distinct DNA trait that no one else has, but we do, because we have to
Right.
go outside. We don't get a vacation from being a black man. We can't be like, all right, like that hashtag is over with, so I can stop being a black
No,
man.
it's
Like we
permanent.
have to live every day as a it's permanent. Like we can't like swap this body.
And nor
And
should you
that's
want
that.
to.
No, nah, I wouldn't trade it for the world, man. Being black is the coolest shit ever. I wouldn't trade it
I
for the
second
world.
that. The thing that I found rather intriguing was when I moved here,
Mm-hmm.
we have a lot of racism in Australia, but the culture
I
here,
didn't know that.
really?
I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
joking.
I'm like, bro,
Yeah.
even 10 minutes in Australia, you can see the fucking racism there.
Oh yeah, man.
The,
Like,
the,
man.
the situation that cops have with black men here, they have with Arab
Mm-hmm.
men in Australia. Right, so
Wow.
that's the relationship there,
Really?
and with the Aboriginal community, yeah. But
Huh.
when I moved here, because we don't have a black community in Australia that's as prominent as over here, and it's a different kind of racism here in the US. It's a really very different kind of. I'm not saying it's better or it's worse or it's inside
Sure.
out or whatever. It's just
Sure.
very different. So I started to deep dive into American history about 5 years ago when I moved over here.
Okay. Okay.
And last August, when the Meek Mills documentary came out, have you seen it yet?
I haven't
When the
watched it
series?
yet. I haven't watched it.
Dude,
Yep.
go watch it.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I would listen to a lot of rap music. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. And so I would listen to a lot of his stuff. and try to understand why, like when he released 444, the idea of legacy being, I mean, genius album.
Genius album. My favorite album of his.
The Black
I think my favorite.
Album is my
Black
favorite.
Album's great.
Like
Blueprint's amazing.
I used to love closing a cafe to the Black Album.
Wow.
Which is because it's this really great energy of, yeah. Anyway.
But that's also the album that he quit the industry on. So closing a cafe makes sense.
Yeah. Well, so like I would listen to that. That was my first exposure to Jay-Z, was the Black Album. And I'm like, hold on. What do you mean? Like he's really popular and now he's leaving. And so that really intrigued me about his journey. And so then 444 comes out, and I'm listening to the progression of this artist, and I'm hearing that something's changed. Now he's become somewhat of he was imparting wisdom. He was trying to he was trying to, in a kind of a prophetic way, saying legacy, focusing on what your legacy will be is the way we change the tide for the Black culture here in America.
Absolutely.
Right?
There's a beautiful, and if you think about, man, we can go line for line with Jay-Z. There's an older line that I love. Jason and I, we talk about it often. Hove did that, so you don't have to go through that. Right. So it's him saying that at 28, coming in at Reasonable Doubt, and then now at 46, 50, I don't know how old he is now. There was a learning process that he's willing, and a lot of people give him a lot of shit for whatever reasons. There's a learning curve that he's willing to try to give the Black community the ticket to and the wisdom for, so we can go around or omit or avoid the mistakes that he made in the industry.
But let me tell you,
in life,
no one who's actually done hard shit is going to give Jay-Z any kind of shit.
Not at all.
So the only people who are giving him shit that don't are the people who don't understand the wisdom and intensity of that line.
That makes a lot of sense, because I know I can vividly think about the people that I know that don't like Jay-Z. I'm like, they didn't do anything.
He's massively inspirational to me, because
that's so important. That's so important.
No one who does hard shit ever knocks anyone else down for attempting or trying hard shit. Because we know the friction that's required the courage that's required to attempt that kind of thing, right?
Yep. And I think that, go ahead.
No, please finish. And you think that...
No, I was just going to say, and I think that no one that does hard shit feels left out when they see people doing hard shit too.
We want to celebrate them and elevate them.
They know what the road looks like. I have friends that I will talk to like once a month, and when the world was the normal that just passed us, we would literally text each other and be like, "Where are you in the world?"
Yeah.
Because we knew that somebody was somewhere pursuing their dreams, doing something hard, and they weren't sitting on the couch. And then if they say, "Oh, I'm in DC, do you want to catch up? Do you want to get coffee? Do you want to hang out?" And that's what I've just chose to put myself around, is that people that are okay with taking the long ass hard road and doing the hard yards and elevating and helping those people along the way.
Well, we just don't have, we don't have the bandwidth to deal with the fakers anymore, because, I mean, it just feels like you're having dessert for dinner.
Well, we talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we have in our private conversations. But going back to the Jay-Z thing, was when I listened to 444 and I heard him saying, like, listen, we can't change this model the way that it is. That's going to be the losing battle.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to elevate shit, we have to think much longer term.
Absolutely.
And that's why having a legacy that we build long-term wealth on is what's going to be important.
I mean, when you think about white wealth and how it's been passed down, they have a 400-year head start on everybody. Right. And then they want us to get over that. And then they want us just to come and operate in society as if shit's normal, when you've had a 400-year head start. And so for most people, I like to call us the one percenters, those that go off and do anything and transcend any form of generational curse. We are the first person that's breaking that at the modern day.
Right.
So you might got somebody in 2020 being the first to do anything in their family. So you mean to tell me that that person has to carry all the responsibility of 400 years, 4 or 5 generations in their personal family, and then 400 years of slavery, and then show up in the same spot? It's bizarre to me, but that's the resilience of Black people, and that's why I enjoy and love to my core by being Black. It's just like we have what you see in the world right now, and I think I forgot the woman that has the beautiful Instagram or video that's spiraling the internet right now. She says, "You're lucky we're seeking
Latrice
justice and not
Johnson.
revenge." Oh man,
Yeah. I posted that on our thing.
That ate my core up. It's like, you're lucky that we're seeking justice and not revenge.
Yeah. Oh,
Giving all
absolutely.
that we've gone through. So
the thing about when Jay-Z started talking about that stuff on that album, actually, before I say that, to your point, I wrote an essay about, and it's on the Elixir Specialty Coffee website, when all of this stuff started coming out and you and I were having conversations. Somebody had asked me to justify, as the CEO of a company, how I intend to dismantle white supremacy, police brutality, and I can't remember what else. It was such a fucking absurd statement. And as though I'm some all fucking powerful being that can dismantle any of that stuff on my own. Somebody had gone and commented that on our Instagram. And so I wrote this essay on the idea of oppression.
Interesting.
And why I have a problem with it and where we stand as a company. And at the end of the day, I want to live in a society where people are not afraid of being on an even playing field.
Beautiful.
Because if people who are the direct beneficiaries of inherent entitlement have that inherent entitlement stripped away from them and have to compete with the rest of us who aren't born with that inherent entitlement.
Absolutely.
Imagine what the fucking world looks like. And that's what Jay-Z's talking about when he talks about legacy. If we want to catch up to these people, if we want to compete on an even playing field, we have to kind of sort of play by their rules.
And I think that's the bone that a lot of people have with him, is that they look at him and they're like, oh, well, he's a businessman always trying to like play by their rules. And I think you're absolutely right. To some regard, you have to learn the rules to break them.
And to even have
you got to get in it to even have a say. Excuse me. You have to follow the rules that were set. And then when you're there, you can do whatever you want.
Yep.
But I think for so long, we've had the rules. We've been silenced to even open our mouth and participate in the rules. We feel like we don't have a voice in them. And Jay's saying, like, you do have a voice if you can be patient enough to go in and do the things that you need to do to occupy space to have a voice. And I think that's a much different conversation.
And when you look at the Meek Mill's docu-series,
okay,
you get a real insight into exactly the kind of fuckery that Jay-Z's talking about. And he was one of the producers of that. Meek Mill's is one of his boys. And they were, I mean, it is the only words that you can kind of come at with this is atrocious, the way that this man was treated. And
I'm going to check it out.
And anyone who seems to think like, and I'm still hearing to this day, people say that, you know, Lee, you shouldn't really believe that black men are treated differently than white men in America because, you know, when you look at the statistics, blah, blah, blah. And I always send them to that docuseries. Because if you believe that this is bullshit, just go and see what Meek Mills has had to endure.
Yeah. Meek Mills and millions of other black
Yeah,
men in this
and that's
country.
just one
Yeah,
example. The reason
yeah,
his story is highlighted is because he has super famous
this is
friends
it's
that
true.
have the
That's
money
true.
to put a documentary
That's
together.
true.
But this is what being Jay-Z
That's
affords
true.
you the opportunity to do. It
Absolutely.
affords you the
Absolutely.
opportunity to have the money to create a docuseries that can then
Mm-hmm.
get out into the world and
Mm-hmm.
showcase the injustice of what's
Mm-hmm.
happening to this
And and
rapper.
and and fortunately, right now, we all taking a page out of my own words. Like we all have the platform to use our voice. So you might not make it to a documentary or docuseries on Meek Mill, but you can use your platforms that you have access to talk about things that are important to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're living in a time where like all of us now are our own like cable network.
Yeah.
We all can
Your
we
own
all care
publicist.
about your own publicist now. Like you can have conversations around the things that matter to you 24/7, 365
Yeah.
if you wanted to. And if we all choose a specific fight to care about, we can all contribute to an overall conversation that can enhance everything. I might care about this. You might care about that. Sekou might care about that. This guy might care about that. And if everybody's fighting that fight, we can land at a point that makes the overall conditions of the world a better place.
And pre-COVID, that kind of megaphone that everyone had was, look how hot my booty is. Look how
Yep.
fantastic my pour over is. Look at my
Mm.
latte art, etc., etc.
Yep. Yep.
And
So we now
now it's
we're
changed.
back from attention to intention.
Exactly. What an
Yeah.
amazing full circle we've come in this conversation, sir.
And this was great, man. Thank you so much for having me, man.
It is
Yeah, this is perfect.
it
This was perfect.
it is
This is
one of
Thanks
those
for pushing me here.
moments where I'm so super proud to have watched something start somewhere 6 years ago, come back to this moment only to start
Yeah.
a new journey together.
Yeah. So grateful for you, Lee. Thank you so
The
much.
feeling is mutual, friend. I wish
Appreciate
you
it.
and Sekou all the best and many blessings
We
from my deepest, deepest intentions that this brand
yeah,
goes on to become everything that you hope for it and that we all hope for it. And the link is in the show notes for anyone who's listening. Now, there's 20 subscriptions that we're starting with. And one of the
yep.
big briefs that we approached with this was that slow drip that we talked about, in the sense that, and we're not using that as a coffee analogy, we're talking about with the way that we're approaching business.
Absolutely.
So we're
Absolutely.
not going to
The
overwhelm
process.
any of it. You guys are working within your budget. All of it's going to be the way that it needs to happen and unfold so that it's manageable. And so there's only 20 openings for the subscription service
Yeah.
starting fall this year, right?
Fall. Yeah, this year. This year.
So have any of them, are there any spots left? Because I know a couple of people that said, like, I'm going to go sign up.
I got a check today. This morning we were at a good number.
Excellent.
We were at a good number.
Excellent.
We were at a good number this morning. And yeah, we were at a good number. But for those that have interest, I hope, it's one of those things, man, like not because I am part brain of this thing. It's one of those things that I would be excited to get on board at the ground level to watch this thing go somewhere.
And elevate it and support it.
And elevate it and
experience
support it and experience it, because all of those things, they're going to push us to do better. They're going to push us to be better. And we don't want anybody a part of the ride that is there for attention. We want people there that has intentions to make sure that we can achieve a level of excellence on every facet of the business to make sure that we continue to evolve it. So.
And thank you for allowing me to be just a tiny little part of it. I'm super proud.
No. We words can't express how grateful we are. And I say we, myself and Sekou involved. And then like another little nudge, we as in me and all the people in my head,
Yeah.
like, because I think you've helped. No, honestly, man,
I can
think,
relate.
you've helped me like sit some people on the sideline. It's like 4 of them up there. They all got different names. I'll tell you about it later. You've helped me like sit a couple people on the sideline and just really do the thing that matters and step up. And now that I'm here, I doubt that anybody will be able to stop us.
Well, I'm
So,
humbled to be of service, sir. So
yeah,
good luck with
Lee,
everything.
it's a pleasure.
I can't wait. Can't wait for what's next. You got
Man,
to
this
come
is
back and
great.
have a chat in 6 months and let us know how it's going.
We'll be here. We'll be here.
All the best to you, mate, and I'll speak to you soon. See you later. Bye.
Later. All right.